Today is a really special day. I am heading over to my local plant nursery to start selecting my plants for my RHS Tatton Park Flowers Show Garden. OGs to my platform will know that I don't drive, so I'm taking the train from Manchester all the way to Earlham, where my plant nursery is. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoy it, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've made it here to Brentwood Moss Nurseries, and this is where I'm going to be selecting the plants for the show garden. So let me take you into the nursery and show you what it's like as a garden designer to go and pick the plants for your show garden. As a non-driver, this nursery is fantastic for me because I can easily reach it on public transport. My planting scheme for this show garden is fairly unusual, so using a wholesale nursery like this with decades of experience is going to be super beneficial. I've decided to split the alley into different sections, so as you walk into the alley, the first thing that you're going to encounter is a perennial garden. We're going to have lots of classic planting in this section that will hopefully resemble what a normal RHS garden would. Right now I'm standing in the herbaceous perennial section, and this is probably one of the key components to the show garden. As per my design plan, I now have come to the nursery and it's now my job to pick out my plants. Now, some garden designers are so talented and trusting that they could submit a list of their plants to the nursery and the nursery will provide everything. But me personally, I pick every single one of my plants individually. So for example, if I was to use this salvia, this plant here is already flowering. Now, if they're going to be in, say, 2 weeks time, I'd be keeping an eye out on the weather forecasts to see whether it's sunny or not, because if it is sunny, then that's probably going to speed up the process of the plants, and by the time the show turns up, the flowers could be spent. You really need to make sure that you're picking the plants correctly so that there are some with some buds yet to come. Earlier in the series, we met Gemma with her pet tortoise, Mr. Tortellini, and that inspired me to create a section of the garden called the Tortoise Pantry, and we're going to have a vertical planter in there, and it will be full of foods that the tortoise can eat. Hopefully that will give Gemma a little bit of peace of mind that the food that she harvests will be free of any of the weed killing chemicals that the council sprays along the alleyway. I enlisted the help of All Saints Catholic School's gardening club to help grow some tortoise friendly foods that I could use on the show garden. The guys spent 3 months growing tons of different herbs and veg and flowers that we could use for Mr. Tortellini. We also organised a day trip to a local care home where we did lots of growing and lots of planting for the care home residents. I think it's so important to get children out growing and learning where foods come from. Once again, to me, this is more than just a show garden. This is real. Just look at all of these smiley faces, all because of the power of gardening. As we move a little bit further down, we're going to head into a wildflower meadow. Now, this is going to feature what I believe to be probably the very first bathtub planter in RHS history. Sure, I can see people complaining about this damn garden, but you know, it is what it is. I don't have any trees on my show garden. Well, actually I do. We'll get back to that. But as you can see, the trees here in these big boy nurseries, the root balls are completely packed up, which makes it easy to transport. Again, with show gardens, you need to think about plant quality as well. And remember that my fences on the show garden are, I think, 6 foot. So I know that I need some bamboo. I found some here, but this is probably going to be a little bit too big. But if we're looking at the plant quality, it is stunning. If we look at the stems, it is beautiful. It's probably just a little bit too big. Any further instructions, if I just submit a list of what I want, I might get something like this turn up, and it looks like a beautiful plant, but it's probably not going to quite hit what my design requires of me. But since I'm here, I can make my way through the plants, and then I can find some that are probably closer to the height that I need. Again, I also have to take into consideration it's 2 weeks before the show. How much is this going to grow in that meantime? And again, the weather. And then how much manipulation is going to be needed to make the plants look great for show. Some of the volunteers will be tasked with pruning the plants back to make sure that they are looking really great for show. But what I don't want to do is get something that needs too much manipulation, because all of the volunteers' time is going to be invested back perfecting the plants, when actually I could be getting them to use their time in a little bit more of a beneficial way. Now I also have some of these Fatsia on my planting list, and again I'm doing the exact same thing. Plants for home, I wouldn't mind any of these holes or marks, but on a show garden, because normally if you have a judged garden you have to worry about plant quality, and that's one of the things that you get marked on. So again, it will be a case of looking through everything and then selecting the plant that is of the best quality. And I don't see a plant that is of the quality that I need. I can either go to another nursery, or I can slightly adapt my planting plan and change out my plants. In addition to an RHS show garden, you also have to be really careful, because they do have a plant health and safety team, and they will come out and check your plants to make sure that they are, of course, healthy, but that you also avoid plants that are on the do not use list. Some examples of plants that you can't use are lavender, rosemary, hebes, and olive trees, amongst other things. Now, I do happen to have lavender on my planting list, so this has created a slight issue for me. However, what Brentwood have been able to do is they have been able to secure some lavender that has been grown here in the UK, I think over the past 5 years, which means that it's free of any diseases, and it also has on it a plant passport which is based here in the UK. So what I will do is bring these plants here from the nursery over to the show, and in my invoice there'll be a plant passport which proves that my plant was grown here in the UK. There's also a sea of different types of grasses to use on the show garden. Container gardeners, grasses are something that we sometimes don't use enough of, but it's really, really important to think about height and texture in your containers. So for example, grasses like this dipper have got such a lovely feel to them, and yet, as you can see, we've got some new grasses coming out. As you can see, there's some new grasses, but look at the height that you have on those. So it's about kind of mixing some of these grasses into your designs in your containers, just so that it's not static and flat. One of the reasons why I love coming myself to shop for my plants individually is sometimes I come across something that wasn't originally in my planting plan. And sometimes I will readjust my planting plan to add some of these new plants in. Now, I'm off to try and find some climbers for the show garden. I have a couple of containers that will have Trichospermum, i.e. jasmine on it. As you can see, this jasmine is $39.95. You can see just how tall it is. So that is an absolute bargain. It's going to be woven into a trellis, and if any of you have tried to manipulate jasmine, it is doable, but it is really time consuming. So although I'm paying £40 for it, it's probably going to take one of the volunteers at the show roughly a couple of hours just to get it in, and that needs to be one of the first things that we do when that plant comes in, because we need to make sure that the leaves are essentially facing the right way by the time the show airs. It's a lot. What I love most about Lanes is the fact that it's a family-run business. During show season, Catherine and her team work tremendous hours to produce all of the plants that we need to create these amazing flower shows. This nursery supplies plants to all sorts of landscapers and garden designers in and around the Northwest. It's highly likely that plants from urban developments like mine, where I live, come from nurseries like this. But during show week, Catherine and her team will be under immense pressure to source plants from all over the world to get transported to her site for us to use at shows. And this nursery isn't just going to serve my garden, they're going to do several of the big show gardens. Now, it's not just the plants that I need to be thinking about, I also need to think about the containers. So one of the things that I'm really conscious of is the garden not feeling real. Like, I want people to walk through it and feel like they are literally walking through the alleyway and moss side. And so I've been very forceful in my desire to include some items that have been fly tipped from the alleyway and repurpose them and use them as containers. For example, Yasmin and Gemma and the rest of the gang in Newland Street, where the garden has been relocated, they already use bathtubs and toilets and sinks and things that landlords have just discarded on the alley and repurpose them as containers. And that's the kind of thing that I think we should be promoting, is rather than some of this stuff going to landfill, is repurposing and reusing what you can, because essentially some of these communities do not have money. So if they can make a container out of a bathtub, so be it. However, there will be communities out there who can spend some money on containers. And so it's for that reason that I've managed to partner up with Robert Dyas. Robert Dyas happened to be an excellent online retailer. And so all of the products that I'm using from Robert Dyas, they can also be purchased online. And I've only selected products which are within a reasonable price range, so you're talking anything up to £100. So things like greenhouses, veg trucks, cold frames, all of these items can be picked up and used there. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to talk at Glee, which is one of the UK's leading garden and outdoor living trade shows. Here I had the opportunity of meeting a number of suppliers to Robert Dyas who would supply some of the furniture and products for the show garden. If you've been following this series, you will know that I only have a width of 75 centimeters for any of my products, so this is a really great opportunity for me to see some of the products in person and also make sure that they are going to match up to my measurements. It's also a great opportunity to meet the teams behind the products and make sure that the brands that I'm using represent the Cloud Gardener UK values. The Alleyway Garden is going to be the only container garden at the Tatton Park Flower Show. Every single plant on my garden will be in a container. Containers can make a really huge difference to the visual impact in your garden. So I headed over to one of my favourite nurseries just to go and take a look and see what they had on offer. I'm here at Notcutts. Now you may remember, if you're an OG to the channel, I've been here before and I've done a whole video here. I love it. But they do have a couple of the containers that I'm going to be using for the RHS Tatton Park Ginnell Garden. Notcutts is a commercial garden centre where your average gardener will go and purchase their plants for their garden. Because I want my show garden to feel real and accessible, I'm also going to be purchasing some plants from here for the show garden too. I want to have some of the containers that I've ordered for the show. So now, because I am not very good at visualizing things on paper, I'm just kind of testing out to see whether or not things work. And I love this. It's also great because I get to see some of the planters that I've ordered as well. And I know I've ordered some white echinacea for the show already at my larger nursery. But sometimes just seeing the plants together now before I get to the show means I can help visualize and pre-plan what I'm going to do. And that's because sometimes when I write things on paper, it looks really great. But then once you see the plants next to each other physically in front of you, sometimes it just doesn't quite work. So I'd rather do some of that pre-planning now so that when we get to the show, it's just job done and a lot easier. Catherine here at Brentwood Moss also has an extensive range of containers as well. I decided to pop into her warehouse to have a look and see what she had. The vast amount of these products are also available on Robert Dyas, so it meant that I could order some of these too. What I've been able to do is reach out to some of the manufacturers of those containers and speak to them directly and see if they can help me source some of those pots for the show garden. The aim for me is to work with as many of these brands as I can, hopefully see if they can help me with either discounts or maybe even freebies, because that will help me to save some money on my budget and then reallocate that money into other parts of the garden. So it could be that, let's just say I save £500 on containers because I've got a £500 discount directly from the manufacturers. I can then reallocate that £500 and get some extra plants in, or I could reuse that for the relocation of the garden or another part of the budget, if that makes sense. Once I've made my final selection, everything will get loaded up onto trolleys, get taken out into the yard, where one of the vans will pick it up and deliver it to the flower show. Okay, I have some post, so let me just open it up and share with you what I've got. There's just about a week left before the start of the show, and things are just getting more and more real. So we've got 7 days to go and the garden is beginning to take shape. As you can see, we've got a lot of our containers in and it's now beginning to look a little bit like an alleyway. The only thing that the garden is missing is plants, and I think that will help to bring it to life. It's not just my garden that has come a long way. Just look at the progress of the show. It's incredible. Captain's log, star date, whatever. The garden is beginning to take shape. And tomorrow is the first day where our volunteers will be coming along to help me, and we have got tons and tons of plants arriving tomorrow, but the only thing is that it's gale force winds, so who knows how that's going to work out. The weather is due to start deteriorating from this evening, and today I have got tons of deliveries. My compost was donated to me by Recycle for Greater Manchester. 2 tons worth of compost, which has all been made from organic waste recycled across Manchester. My containers also started to arrive. And of course, it wouldn't be a real alleyway without bins. My baby brother came to help me out on the show garden, and he was driving the van for us. And child, that weather was not to be played with. In fact, it got progressively worse. It is July and just look at this weather. I had no idea what I was going to walk into tomorrow when I got back to the show garden. It was worse than I thought. As it's an alleyway, it kind of acted like a wind tunnel and completely turned over some of my containers, some of my veg trucks and potting benches, and as you can see, parts of the fence have blown off as well. All I could do at this point was try and put things back together again, make a phone call to Rupert, my landscaper, and see if he could come down and help fix things. I hope that you've enjoyed hanging out with me today and seeing the show garden world from a slightly different point of view. I hope you have kind of seen a little bit more about what goes into making these gardens so special. Hopefully I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye. The next episode, it is going to be show week. So make sure that you are following along to see if we can turn this space into an amazing alleyway. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Bye!